What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Review for Summertime Rendering. This is episode 25, and with me, as always, I have Blue Spade.
Yeah, and of course, the series finale of Summertime Rendering.
Yeah.
After 25 episodes of having to watch it on third-party sites without relying on whatever Disney is trying to do. I don't know whether or not they're getting.
It is, like I said before, it's going to be really interesting to see how Disney ends up handling this series, considering this is I think it's like the first anime series they're like putting on the Disney Plus, right? I mean, or at least if you don't count the Ghibli stuff, I guess.
Yeah, that's and of course that Star Wars Visions anime series that they released earlier. I think it was last year. Yeah, I think it was last year. But anyway, so. It pretty much the episode starts off where the last one left off. We see Shinpei waking up board to board with Hizuru, pretty much blurting out her her real identity without really even knowing how he even learned it in the first place. It's pretty obvious that that the memories of the previous Shinpei transferred into this Shinpei. So. And of course, we know that in this timeline that the shadows no longer exist thanks to the Shadow Ushio erasing. What was it? I think it was the
whale.
The whale Hiroko.
Yeah.
So now that the shadows no longer exist, Shinpei is coming back home to the island because Ushio called him to attend the festival. Otherwise, she'll end up dragging him back over there. So, there are moments where he feels like this has happened before, but under different circumstances. But he just doesn't even know why. So, like one example is like him seeing Mio riding downhill with the bike, and he tries to stop her from falling off from the port like she did before, but without the shadows interfering, her brakes don't break as they did before, so she's able to stop right before Shinpei stops her.
Yeah, and of course Ushio is cleaning up the beach, kind of like what she was doing when she was murdered by or drowned by one of the shadows.
Yeah.
But yeah, as we can tell, the circumstances are different, of course, because the shadows aren't around. So and Tokiko also end up greeting Shinpei, and things are pretty similar, but also a little bit different in that, of course, because the shadows aren't around, certain characters are, of course, alive, and they're kind of doing, I guess, what they would have done had the shadows not interfered.
Yeah.
And of course, it's kind of like the episode kind of plays out like how I predicted what would happen, where, especially with Ryunosuke, that he was, of course, he's alive, and he's, I guess, the age he would be, which is probably, I don't know how old he actually is, but I guess he's around Hizaru's age.
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised. I wasn't exactly sure what they were going to do with the whole Heine being reincarnated thing. I thought that at first I thought that she was actually going to end up being his wife, but it was actually the I forget this woman's name, but the friend of Hizuru, I think. And they, of course, they still have that one little girl that's still her daughter, but they also have another child, which is, of course, Heine, or they're supposed to be the reincarnation of Heine.
Yeah, and of course, this Heine also has the same voice actors as as the actual Heine. So it's interesting that they, I don't know if she's actually. They never really implied it, but she could be a reincarnation of sorts, but. They never really get into that, and I'm curious if either Ryunosuke married to, I'm trying to remember her name. It's Man, I completely
Yeah, she was a fairly minor character. I kind of completely forgot what her name was, but yeah, it's yeah, we see some of him, and of course, Hizuru is kind of like asking Shinpei about his because he says basically like he's had these dreams, and the dreams are probably just memories of the other timelines. So he's kind of like telling her the details of his dreams, and she ends up writing about it. In of course in a story that she of course titles "Summertime Rendering," which I guess is of course Shinpei's account of his dreams, which is may or may not be an accurate account of what happened during the series.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, she ends up writing about that, and it basically we have a lot of scenes that are kind of just these interactions between Shinpei and Ushio. Where like Ushio is looking for her shell necklace, and Shinpei they end up finding it on the beach, and Shinpei kind of ends up like apologizing for like how they left things off when he left the island initially. So it's so there's that, and of course like we have the whole thing with the festival happening, and another interesting thing is that we see the priest. What was his name again? Like Karakiri.
Yeah,
Karakiri. Yeah. We see him, but of course he's like an old man. Or he's he's an older man, and he has a son. Which was kind of interesting. I kind of was wondering what they were going to do with him. I kind of figured he would still be around. But he would just be more so, of course, a descendant of the man that or the original that it was like around like 300 or so years ago.
Yeah, it made sense that members of his family would still take over the roles as priest on the island. But yeah, at least they're not like the exact same Shide, that they have the more malicious intentions of trying to murder people left and right. But yes, there's one thing I wanted to point out is I also did read the manga portion of this after watching this episode. They added a lot of anime original content in this episode compared to how they showed it off in the manga, because the manga version of the epilogue is a lot shorter than this one, because in the manga, like Shinpei first meets Ushio on the beach, but in this episode, they first meet each other right by the port, with Ushio attempting to punch Shinpei. So that's how they added that part. And of course that anime original scene in which Shinpei meets the Karakiri descendants up on the the shrine up top.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do kind of like that he expanded on the ending, and it's not just a one-for-one adaptation in that sense. And he at least tried to improve on the ending from the manga. But yeah, of course, the festival happens, and Shinpei and Ushio end up watching the fireworks, and I mean it's a pretty nice scene. I think it was a pretty satisfying way to end things. And of course that's not the of course we still have like this one other scene where I think it's like Ushio's birthday, and that's kind of where things actually end, where it's just like I guess her 18th birthday or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also they have like they try to have So confess to Mio again, but we don't really. I mean, I guess we can assume how that went, and it's just it might have just gone the same way as it always does in the other timelines too.
Yeah, because I think.
But I don't know. I mean, you could also assume that maybe I don't know. Maybe Mio realizes that she's like of course Shinpei doesn't reciprocate her feelings or something, and maybe things might be different now because of that. But I guess, but I don't know. It's kind of, we don't really know because they didn't really confirm anything, but I guess we can assume what might have happened, and I lean towards it's probably just the same outcome.
Yeah, they never really answer that question, unfortunately, but
Yeah.
it still leaves off in a on a pretty good note with all the characters living a happy life on the island. Not that the shadows no longer exist, even if like some
Yeah,
of them don't remember the exact details of what happened.
I can't say like when I first watched this series, I expected like a happy ending. I thought it was going to be more of a, well, not a depressing one, but more of like a bittersweet ending in a way. But it's one of those endings where, of course, everybody survives and it's kind of a happy ending. I mean, I guess the way they handled it kind of made sense, but yeah, I mean, I guess I'm mostly satisfied with the way of it concluded at least. Um, it is kind of weird because when we first watched it, it felt like it leaned much more into the mystery horror element, and then it felt like at a certain point in the series it leaned more into an action direction, maybe at like the halfway point or so. I mean, I don't particularly mind that, but it's just like it felt like it kind of the whole like horror mystery vibe kind of it went more like action in a way.
Yeah, it sort of did lean that direction once they actually did reveal a lot through the halfway portion of the series, and then the second half was just mainly focused on like Shinpei and the others finding out how to stop the shadows and getting rid of them for good. So I mean, the action scenes itself weren't bad, and I think some of them, like particularly like how the Shadow Ushio fought, was animated pretty well at times.
Yeah, I thought in terms of the animation, it definitely looked really good. I definitely it's a very like, I mean, there are definitely scenes where a lot of people like I guess have issues with some of the facial expressions or the animation for the faces at times, but I think I don't know, like usually I feel like it serves a purpose. Like it's more to be, like in one of those episodes, it was more to be comedic. And then in some other scenes, it's more for dramatic effect. But I guess some people might argue like, they didn't really need to do that. But I don't know. I thought it was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I thought overall it was a decent series. I guess in terms of a number score, I'd probably say it's a 7. I don't know. I don't know. What would you give it?
I don't know. I give this a 9 because I thought
really?
this. I thought the way they handled this was it was pretty well done in terms of how they handled the mystery aspect and including some of the action scenes. It's just some of the issues I did have is they did kind of go a little bit overboard with some of their facial animations, and then Shide's villainous motivations as to why he wants to end the world because he can't he can no longer get to a point where he can live forever is kind of I don't know how I feel about that.
Yeah, it felt like at the end they tried to do it like a plot twist. Is it like who the real villain is? I guess it's not. It's more like Shide just controlling everything. And I don't particularly mind it, but yeah, like you said, his motivations are very they're very generic. Like it's basically he wants to see the world end.
Yeah, and of course, much of the show has a lot of inspiration from ReZero and Higurashi. I mean,
yeah, it felt like more so the first half was inspired by Higurashi, and then it moved more towards, I guess, just being ReZero or like Steins Gate or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, there was like one scene I forgot to point out is that one episode in which Mio tries to confess her feelings to Shinpei, and then of course Shinpei turned her down in favor of Ushio. I mean, I forgot to mention that that's exactly what happened in ReZero when Subaru rejected Rem for Amelia. So I completely forgot to point that out in one of our previous reviews. But yeah, I kind of found it a little bit funny that they did a repeat on that exact scene. I mean, it didn't really have much of the same impact as it did for ReZero, but still it's like it's kind of funny that they did something similar with that one.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I guess like my whole overall reason that it's a 7 for me is because I kind of went in and thinking it was going to be like something else, and then it kind of at one point in the series it kind of shifted into some, another thing. Not necessarily that it was bad in doing that, but I feel like it, as we got more heavy into the exposition as to what the shadows are and all that, it kind of, in a way, it kind of like ruined any of the mystery aspect the series might have had, and that was kind of thrown out the window. So it's like, I mean, there are still things we didn't know about the shadows, of course, but a lot of it is explained through exposition dumps throughout the series. I kind of wish it was a little bit more like Higurashi in the aspect that, we still do learn a lot about what's going on, but there are a lot of things we still don't know. But Summertime Rendering is like, yeah, it's just like we learned like pretty much everything about how the shadows work and all that. So I don't know. I guess that's like one of my main criticisms going through the series is after like reflecting on it. But yeah, aside from that though, I don't really have too much else to say about it. It was a decent series. I'm glad I watched it. I mean, I really didn't know what to expect going in. Well, I kind of knew what to expect. And then, of course, like I said, it kind of shifted gears at some point. But I thought it was, for the most part, a pretty decent series, and I'm glad I watched it. But I don't know if you have anything else to say about it.
Oh yeah, I had fun watching this show from start to finish. Even like there was some. It transitioned from the mystery aspect to an action heavy oriented series by the second half. I think it still did pretty well in what they wanted to do.
Yeah. I guess that's gonna be it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed the series. If you watched it along with us and you enjoyed the reviews, like I said, I'll be interested to see how Disney handles it, especially considering the kind of series it is. I know they have like the parental controls and all that on Disney Plus, so I'm wondering if like they're going to even bother trying to censor it.
I mean, it's still technically it's still not out on Disney Plus over on stateside, even if you tried to, I mean, there's technically
the information page
yeah. I mean, there's still technically a Google link for you to click, but it'll immediately reject you if you're living stateside, unless you live in Japan or someplace else. But as of right now, I just don't know how Disney is planning on distributing this, or how they're gonna get all these episodes out. Either they're just gonna, or maybe perhaps they're just waiting on the dub to finish, or whoever they're trying to cast and stuff. But as of right now, it's just hard to even tell what they're really planning, and whether or not what other anime series might be coming out on that streaming service. I mean, other than Bleach, which we know has I don't know, it has been having some weird marketing issues here and there. Yeah, but that's gonna be another video entirely. But overall, I did enjoy it. It's just it's a shame that we had to resort to third party, watching the entire series this way. But yeah, overall it was so good.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing too that's also just a shame about the series is that I feel like people would have gotten more exposure to it had it properly been streamed on a streaming platform. And the way that Disney Plus is handling it is, I'm guessing they're going to do the Netflix thing, where they're going to release everything at once, and it's going to be the whole binge model where the whole season comes out, and they expect people to watch it that way. And I'm just crossing my fingers they're not doing the same thing with Bleach. But yeah, I mean, I really wish the series hadn't been handled that way, because that way, like I said, more people would have been exposed to it, and more people would have watched it. And I feel like the series does deserve that, but because of the way it was handled, we have to resort to third-party sites in order to watch it each week. So that was definitely annoying. But yeah, that all being said, guys, until next time, we will see you all later.